Welcome everybody to the 2022 Division BC season kickoff. I am delighted to have so many people here this morning. I'm Karen Emmons and I'm the state director. I'm joined today by Emily Owens, our assistant state director, as well as several others from the VASO board and VASO key volunteers. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be quite a year, and I'm grateful for the chance to talk with you all about it. And actually, at one point, I'm going to ask for some feedback as well, too. But before we get started, on this, the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, I think we all remember those we lost and honor the brave first responders and others who worked tirelessly to help their fellow citizens. So I ask everyone, before we start, to join me in a brief moment of silent respect. Thank you. All right. So we actually have quite a few new people here today, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So expert coaches, if you'll pardon me the opportunity to give my 2-minute, 2-slide introduction to what is Science Olympiad. So Science Olympiad is one of the premier science tournament organizations in the United States. It is an international nonprofit organization devoted to improving the quality of science education. It is one of the big things that's special about it. It's an emphasis and exposure to many fields of science, often things that are, that they might see in college or things that they might not have, students may not have easy access to in other places. And it's focused on coordinating with schools. And also there's an emphasis in the events that are chosen to meeting national curriculum standards. Science Olympiad is not science fair, right? People get confused about that. Students are not creating their own projects. They are competing in events that we provide with the rules. It's not an emphasis on any one particular field of science, and it's not a competition for individuals. Science Olympiad is team-based. So a tournament in Science Olympiad is like a track meet. I think that's the best description so you can get an idea of what you would be expecting. In a track meet, a school would send a team of students to the track meet, and you would have your sprinters and you would have your jumpers and whatnot. And all of these events, the sprinting, the running, the leaping, the jumping, those are all happening at different times through the day. The students move in and out and they participate in those events as they have to watch out a little bit for conflicts and make sure that one event doesn't conflict with another if they're doing several different things. And then they get individual medals, and then the whole team or school may get a whole overall score. So that's how Science Olympiad tournament works. In Science Olympiad, there are 15 students on a team covering up to 23 events that we offer. It's not a full slate of 23 typically at regionals, it's fewer, and we'll talk about which events as we get a little further on. Schools can field up to 3 teams. Students tend to have expert topic areas, so you'll have your kids that are the life science kids, and you'll have the ones that love rocks and then you have your physics kids and your chemistry and your engineers. Students will receive medals in the events. So an event, as I use that word, the meeting is being recorded, the pop-up is covering the slides. Oh, okay, so if is it really? I'm not sure how to get rid of that. Does anybody have any suggestions on getting rid of the meeting recording pop-up?
There should be an option to hit got it, that yes, you acknowledge it as being recorded. If you do that, it should go away.
Yes, so yes, please acknowledge it so you can see the slides. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you. Okay, So on we go. So when we talk about an event, in this case, we're talking about kind of, it might be like anatomy, or maybe it's mousetrap vehicle, or rocks and minerals, or experimental design. So this, when we use the word event, that is our equivalent of the 100-meter dash and the pole jump and whatever else. Students don't compete as individuals though in the event. In the 15 students on the team, you can combine them up and they'll work in pairs and trios on events. So you might send a pair to anatomy or a pair to chem lab. And the rules tell you how many you can, and they're working together. So the students on the team aren't competing against each other. If you have multiple teams from your school, the teams are competing against each other, but the students that go as a pair from one team aren't. Your team will receive an overall score based on student scores in those individual events. I'm saying individual, but I mean individual a little bit loosely. And then the top teams, based on the score of the whole team, get to progress to the next level of competition. So you would have regionals, then the top teams will go to states, and then there is also a national tournament as well. So that is my quick exposure to Science Olympiad. Any questions on that in general? We will go into a lot of specifics in a minute.
Karen, I had a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just for my own knowledge, when one of the teams, when they kind of make it to the state level,
Yes.
is that something that you guys will let us know, or is that something we have to apply for?
No, we'll let you know if you qualified and ask you if you want to come.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. We will usually announce at the beginning of before the tournament happens how many will be able to proceed on to the state tournament. So you actually even will be able to figure it out for yourself. But we coordinate with you and let you know. All right. So this season is unusual. In the past, we have to address an uncertain pandemic situation, and I know you all have seen the same thing I am, which is that I wake up every day and the issues about what regulations are being applied, or mandates or not mandates, or what are schools requiring, what are school districts requiring, what is the state requiring. We're in a really uncertain time right now, and it seems to be changing so very fast, but it is a priority to us to respect the requirements, needs, and concerns of competitors, volunteers, parents, and the venues as well. It is a priority for us to align with nationals, which means aligning with their event slate, some of their priorities, and also recognizing that the nationals has already announced that their national tournament in May, which is being sponsored by Caltech, will be what they call a satellite model, meaning that it won't be having any activities in person in a group, that schools will that the teams that are invited to the national tournament will do all the activities, including all the builds, all the chemistry stuff, everything at their school with remote judging. That is how the national tournament is going to be held. But it is also a priority for us to create a meaningful tournament experience. So we want to bring back the build events. That was when we were all virtual last year, we all missed those desperately. And if you know anything about my family, you know that is a very true statement. My family's just really keen on the building events. We want to create as much of the in-person energy and experience as possible. And it's important to us to keep the strong relationship that we have with the alums and the other volunteers who made our last year so spectacular. So then what are we going to be doing? So the VASO tournament model for this year is, what we're going to do is a hybrid model. So it takes a little bit of what Nationals is doing, but recognizes that we would like to do some of it in person. We're talking about having a virtual written test day. So in other words, all the written tests would be, well, we'll talk about exactly how we would do it. A virtual written test day, and then an in-person device testing day for the builds. So that's a mix between national satellite model, where everything's performed and judged all within the schools via Zoom and submitted videos and however they're going to do that, and an in-person model. And it's a mix of that. We're trying, I think we're being sensitive to the concerns of all parties. It brings back the builds in a good, strong, positive way with in-person judging, which really is better for the build events. It brings back some of the in-person experience. Teams will be together for both days and cheering for their teammates on device day. And again, I'm going to explain how that's going to work. And by pulling the devices out of the satellite model, we're not asking all of you coaches to reserve gym space, set up labs, have build testing equipment, monitor safety, all of those things that would have to happen if you're doing all of the activities in your school. But I will say that we are hoping, it is our hope that for states that we will be able to have an in-person state tournament at UVA, and we have a date reserved. We will continue to let people know as we know things about that. But we are moving forward, working with the Engineering Student Council at UVA to make that happen. And I'm just hoping that the world is in a space where it can. So what does a hybrid regional look like? That, of course, is the question here. So let's talk about the written test day. I talked about a virtual written test day. That would be one written test day for all the teams in Virginia. In general, this would include also if an event has, some of the events have a written test component and a build as part of the same event, like Wi-Fi lab, sounds of music. There's a variety of those. Those are called hybrid events. And I know that's a confusing use of the word hybrid because I'm talking about the hybrid model, but there are also events that are not only written or only device, they're both. And so all the written components will be done on the written test day. The test will be administered inside Olympiad, which is a testing program written specifically for SO. Many of you are familiar with it. Some of you are not. Don't panic. We will do training on it for those of you that are not. Teams will gather at their schools, and coaches and your designees will proctor the tests. Tests will be on, I'm going to say, the 6-session traditional schedule. We will talk about what that schedule looks like a little bit later. So just for the moment, believe that there's a schedule. And for those of you that are familiar with that, you know what I mean by that. And one of the nice things about this year that I know was frustrating for people last year is, as far as we're concerned, partners will be able to sit beside each other or in earshot. They don't have to be distanced in different rooms. That, of course, is assuming that individual school rules allow that. So, all right. The device testing day. Tarun, I see your question. I'm going to answer that in just a minute. The device testing day, as opposed to having one date for the written test, we will be offering several device testing days where the build events will be held, or the build components of those hybrid events. And the device day you attend determines which regional you are in. And what I mean by that, so a regional is the grouping of teams that are competing against each other for the opportunity to go to states. And we want those to be smallish groupings, right? We don't want to have a one gigantic all-state regional. So we're gonna, if we can offer several days, your regional is the device day you choose. And that makes a lot of sense because a lot of the devices are very dependent on what kind of conditions they're being run in. Ping pong's parachute depends on the height of the ceiling, which varies from venue to venue. Or Wi-Fi lab depends on the hallway, again, which varies. Or the floor surface. We want the testing conditions, teams competing against each other, to have the same testing conditions, because that's the fairest way to do that. So it is the device day that will determine which regional you are a part of. Teams will have a roughly 2-hour window on the campus of where the device day is to rotate through all their build events. Teams will be limited to 2 chaperones. That's our best guess at the moment. Build events will not be open to the public. So device day is not going to be open to the public. But as you rotate through all the build events, your team members are going to be there and can cheer, are expected to cheer for their teammates, and provide some of that energy and excitement. Possibly we will ask teams to bring one volunteer to help while they're present, to do something like, run a stopwatch, right? Because we'll need timers for flights or vehicle events or that kind of thing. And we will let you know about that, though I think that will probably vary based on venue. For example, we have access and very many eager UVA students who would likely support a Charlottesville site. So it might not be necessary at Charlottesville site to ask you to bring a volunteer to work. Actually, before we move on, I'm going to ask, does anybody have any specific questions about what I've said thus far?
Karen, I have a question regarding device testing day. These details for where they'll be held and when they'll be held based on our regional will be sent later on, right, to us?
I'm going to cover that in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Good thinking ahead. Anybody else? Okay. For the watching team members, the team members that may watch can only be those who are doing build events. You can bring, as far as we can, this has got to evolve a little bit depending on conditions around the, in society, right? We're discussing now something that will be happening in February, the device days. And as we can see, everything is changing from moment to moment a bit, but our expectation is that you can bring the whole team, even ones that aren't participating in the device day. If they all want to come and cheer, that would be fine. Or you can only bring, if you want to only bring the team members that are doing builds and minimize how many you have to get there, that would be fine too. That would be a decision you would want to do. Okay. Matt, I see your question. That information's coming. The challenges of the hybrid regional model. I'm going to be blunt about this. So we have, I think, 3 primary ones. First one is the written test day. Arrangements need to be made for time and space at your school to do this. All right. So that would be something as we come up with a date for that I would encourage you to begin those discussions now to make sure you don't need a lot of time and space. We're not asking you to have to rent gym space and lab space. You just need a space where you can get your team together, are able to proctor their use of Olympiad and whatnot too. But those arrangements do need to be made. It will require for the regionals, for teams, and I know the janitor costs might be a piece of that. And that's something for you all to coordinate with your principals. Hopefully principals will recognize this is a sponsored team of the school, right? So, so I would encourage you to discuss that and see. Also, we're going to discuss pricing a little bit later, and we have given some substantial, we've given discounts, and I hope that will help teams some with this need, if that's an issue for you. It will require teams to give 2 Saturdays to the regional rather than 1. And I know that in our busy lives, that can be a challenge. And it will also require team coaches to finalize their roster before written test day, because written test day is going to go first, and then disallow them from changing it for device day, right? Because we have to ensure there's only 15 students in the team. We have to know who those 15 students are, and students can't come in and go out after written test day, even though there will be an interval in between those two. I think that's mostly a Division C issue where the rosters are more fluid, but please be aware of that and thinking about that. All right, here's the big question that everybody is sending little questions about. Regional written test day. Our anticipation had been we have been targeting January 29th. We have just in the last day and a half discovered that that is the date, that morning is the TJ admissions written test. And I know that, we can't avoid every conflict, Science Olympiad, but there are certain conflicts we do try to pay attention to and avoid, and that's one of them. For written test day, one of the things that we've been trying, is coordinating and working very hard on is to, Virginia Tech has agreed to sponsor that, provide the workers for written test day so that you all don't have to do any, don't have to give us an ES, don't have to give volunteers to help grade. And that's a gift. So we also have to work within their schedule as well too. I'm going to come back to this and actually open it for a little bit of discussion about some of the alternatives we're potentially considering, but let me move on to some of these other dates. And I know you've all read ahead of me anyway. The regional device testing days, schools will attend one. And our intention is to have 2 Northern Virginia locations, one on February 12th, one on February 26th, and 1 Charlottesville location. When I made this slide, I said I anticipate February 19th. I'm 95% that that's good now. So those are our dates for the device testing days. And then we have UVA, we are working towards March 26th. The reason I wrote anticipated there is just still hoping for the ability to be able to have it in person. So the regional written test day is a challenge. I know that many people would want us to offer 2 alternatives, but the challenge of that would be that we can't get, in the same way, we can't get consistent grading. In the same way that I spoke about how the device day is going to determine which regional you're a part of, because things like ceiling height and floor surface and all of these things matter in device testing. What matters in written tests and what we do, if you've ever sat in on one of my trainings about being an ES and a judge at grading, you've heard me say time and time again, we have to grade every paper the same. Like, we want a consistent single person to grade all the same questions on a test paper, because that is the fairest method of grading, that everybody is experiencing the same thing. And if we have 2 different dates, we cannot assure that will happen. Now, some of the things that we are considering, and I have a poll here. Now, this is the first time I've ever tried to launch a poll. Let's see if I can get it to work. I'm going to invite everybody to look at this poll at the moment. And you're welcome to just check all the things that you think might be okay to do. And I'm not holding anybody to any of it at the moment, because I know you probably don't have a calendar in front of you. You haven't been able to check and see what's what. But these are some of the options that we're looking at. Is okay, can we compete later in the day on January 29th? Because January 29th is a date that we have confirmed with Tech. We could move the written test day a week earlier. I am 90% certain Tech would agree to that. The Tech students would agree to that. We could move the written test day to Sunday, January 30th. I have not been able to run that one by tech. I'm guessing that might be okay. That might be a problem. I don't know. I don't know if that would be an issue for you all. I know a lot of schools give space on Sundays to small churches, to Chinese schools, to other activities, that those are long-standing commitments. And I don't know if you might come up against that in trying to schedule your time in the school if we moved it to a Sunday. I don't love this idea because I think it's going to be a drain on our resources a lot, but we could consider doing B and C separately, move Division B written test day to January 22nd and keep Division C on the 29th. I'm not sure really what that nets us as opposed to just moving the whole thing to January 22nd, which again, when we're trying to coordinate with all the living learning communities and all the hundreds of, we need over 100 volunteers, and they've been able to provide that. Doing that at a single time or throughout the course of a day is a little bit easier. One final option, but one I'm not exuberant about, and I don't know that you all would want to be either, but I will say that we could consider allowing teams to take the test anytime during the week before January 29th. Now you'd have to do it kind of in that setting or in that kind of a setup where you're still gathered at the school, proctored, so forth. But I could not guarantee that we would have people on the other end of Olympiad. If you had technical problems, if you had questions about tests that you needed an ES to answer, which is something that we can say will happen if we're at a single time. So these are some of our thoughts, and I will be honest, the one I'm gravitating towards is competing later in the day on the 29th. There are many of you on this call. I do want to make sure that people know that the 29th, the 22nd, I think those are long weekends. One of them is an FCPS long weekend. One of them is a Loudon long weekend. Scheduling this is very, very challenging. But I've kind of tried to lay out to you the issues that we face or that we're considering as we're looking at scheduling this. I am willing to open this up to discussion for 4 or 5 minutes. We're not going to solve this problem right this minute. I would also invite you to look at your calendars, think a little bit about these options and write me an email. I don't promise I will reply, but I promise I will read every word that you all write as we try to sort this out over the next few days. So for the next 4 or 5 minutes, I open this up. Would anybody like to make any comments about any of this?
Kiran, can I say
Yes.
something? Okay, so I'm from Jackson. So I mean, like, I know for some students, this TJ test means everything. And the mentality of these students is I teach the AP, they're like the mentality, they're all focused. So having the same day after that, I don't think they're going to give 100% on that. They'll be like double stressed out. First the test. I have like one student who literally starts talking about invitations every single day with me. So, like these kind of students will literally be like, I feel stressed out. So having on that day would really not would really double stress them, I feel. And I would rather choose the previous week before that, in my opinion, if everything.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that that's certainly a very reasonable. I had children that sat through that test too, and I know it's exhausting. Emily, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide a little bit of context for people because TJ admissions process, as you may have followed in the news, has changed in the past year. So when we say that this is a test day, it is specifically the problem-solving essay. It is no longer like the standardized math and science-based test that they used to take. It is just a problem-solving essay. So the preparation that may be involved might be different as teams and students are still acclimating to like what this new process looks like. So that's an unknown variable for all of us, but I did just want to clarify what that day is.
Thank you for that, Emily. Um, somebody wrote in the chat that FC, if we go on like one of these long weekends that are teacher work days, and being available, I will say that I think many of you had the experience last year of being available while your students were doing Olympiad things. There's actually, other than coordinating a few people to proctor at certain times, there's not much you would need to do. If you were trying to work on grades, which is what I saw a teacher write a comment about, working on grades through this happening. You're not moving from place to place. You're kind of settled in one place, and you would actually want to bring something to work on a little bit anyway. I do see that somebody is recognizing that Sunday is certainly a day of worship for some people, and I do know that. I don't want to be centric about that, Christocentric about that. So I do know that that's an issue, certainly. Anybody else? So somebody has written, I grade all the time at these events. Remember that the chat is not an open chat. It's only at the moment going to Emily and me. So if you're trying to answer somebody's query, it would be better if you did it out loud. So. Anybody else? I know it's a lot to think about, and we will not dawdle on this, right? I'll tell you that we actually really tried to address this before, and by the time we had to start negotiating with the Virginia Tech students, TJ hadn't announced yet. So then we turned around and we're like, ah. So I do appreciate those of you that wrote to me to let me know about it, so we could deal with it in a timely fashion. So just based on people's response to this poll, nobody was very excited about taking the test without ES support. I don't know if I end the poll, will people see it? I've never actually, but we were pretty split about either moving it or to a Sunday, or moving it to the week before, or competing later in the day. So I will, please take your time to think a little bit about it and write me an email the next couple of days, and I will look at those with interest. So, but anyway, you can see the results. So those were the results that came out. All right, that was my first poll. That seemed to work okay. I'm gonna close that down, and we're gonna move on from the expected dates. And I'm going to address the elephant in the room. So I'm seeing something about an invitational. I'm sorry, I can't, an invitational that's happening on one of those dates. I respect that there are some very well-loved invitationals out there. We can't schedule around invitationals. That's a step too far from us. We're trying to not schedule at the same time as the TJ test or the SATs or math counts, the kind of primary things that are conflicts. So I'm sorry about that. We won't be paying attention to the invitationals that are happening in other states. All right, the elephant in the room: vaccines, masks. What are we asking for? We are going to ask that on written test day, your teams follow the requirements or guidance of your school. You're going to be in your school, so if it's masks, if it's whatever it is, which again, all of seems to be changing from week to week, but it should be all settled out by then, and we'll know, and we'll have that worked out, I would imagine. We're not going to monitor that. That is for you to monitor and coordinate with your school. For device day, teams and VASO personnel will be expected to observe the COVID restrictions are in place by the site. We certainly expect that to include masks, required masks, and at a best guess, that's a guess, but our best guess, it's going to require full vaccination of adults. I mean, that's currently the requirement of FCPS for teachers and chaperones. I think LCPS is on board with that now. I think that we're going to ask for that, but that's a guess, and we are going to see how the world evolves as we get a little closer. We've always asked parents to sign a student release yeah, oh my goodness, that's a little repetitive. A student release for students. We asked parents to sign a release for their students who are participating. We're going to ask the adults who are coming to Device Day to sign a release as well. All right, that is the end of the structure. And now we're going to discuss events. So I'm going to give you one more opportunity. Anybody got a question that they would like to ask of me or us? All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass it over to our Assistant State Director, Emily Owens, who has been working hard on our schedule, and you can see what's going on there.
Thanks, Karen. All right, so we are going to be talking about some of the information that was shared with the national release of their rule book. VASO released some information about our event-specific decisions that we've posted on our website. So this is what you should be seeing right now, is the VASO homepage for our website. And you can see that our one thing that's under what's new right now is the release of that information, our regional tournament format, which Karen already went over a little bit, and then our events for the 2022 season. So if you click on the events link, this is a page that, for those of you that are returning coaches, you know that this is a page that you don't just visit at the beginning of the year. We do update with information throughout the season regarding clarifications and things like that. But for right now, the main important information that you need is in these 4 links at the top of the page. So the first thing is that you are able to download the event rules from the National Science Olympiad website. This link here, download event rules. This is the way that they are asking every person to access them, to not download them and share them necessarily on your own website, but to go through their page and putting in your info, because they want to be able to track like how many people are accessing the rule books. So the link there will take you to the National ESO download site. Okay. And it's important, of course, that we note that we're downloading the 2022 rules. If there are rules from previous years, they're very likely not going to be the same. You can print out and copy them, but you just can't post them publicly on any electronic forum. So the National ESO download site, there's B and C posted separately. You'll be able to fill in your information, the role of, if you're the coach or if a student is downloading them. Again, they're just using that just to kind of track like who's downloading them, just to see how many students, what schools, etc. And when you do that, this year it's generating an email that it will send to you. And then the link will take you to the 2022 rules page. So this is the response that you'll get. Thank you for your submission. And you'll get an email that has the rules linked to you. That rule book is going to have most of the information that you need as you begin to acclimate yourself to what events we are running, and beginning to, once you have your team members crafting what events they are participating in. So just want to make sure that that is the first step that every person should be taking, is to download those event rules from nationals. After that, the most useful information currently for what you should be looking at and taking some time to kind of pour over is this 4-page document that was posted on September 7th. So going back, just to be clear about what link it is, it's the event list, schedule, and conflicts. And this is going to be where you see all of the Virginia specific decisions that we have made. So the first 2 pages are Division B and the second 2 pages are Division C. And you can see that we've broken it down here into what events are going to be showing up for the regional written test day, what events will be part of the device testing day for the regional, and then also what our intention is for our in-person state tournament and what that may look like for any changes in events for that as well. Some things to note when you're looking through this list, we do have some events that are designated as states only. This means that they will not be run at the regional tournament at all and will only be done in what we hope is the in-person state tournament. So for example, looking at Division B, we can see that Bioprocess Lab is going to be a states only event, as well as Electric Right Stuff, Meteorology, and Write It, Do It. One other thing to note is that we are doing a substitution for an event. The national event is experimental design for both regionals and state in both B and C. We are substituting experiment and data analysis. If your team participated last year, you'll be familiar with this event. This is what we substituted for experimental design last year as well. This event is not in the Nationals rulebook. So in order to access those rules, you need to get them directly through the VASO website, and they are posted there for you. So you can see that we have all events listed for B and C on our website. If you navigate to experiment and data analysis, you'll see that there is a link for the rules, and that is what we will be using in lieu of the experimental design event that's in the Nationals rulebook. Every other event that we're running is in the Nationals rulebook for you to see. So returning to this page. So you can see that for every event that has a written test that we are running on regionals, it notes that it's going to be taking place in Olympiad. As Karen mentioned, this is a platform specifically for Science Olympiad virtual testing. And if you're unfamiliar with it, we will offer training. If you were participating last year, it is the same platform through which we ran regionals and state last year. And you'll also see that for some events, there's a note about how they might be modified to fit the virtual environment. So for things like Crime Busters and Food Science, or in Division C, Chem Lab, Environmental Chemistry, and Forensics, it notes that they're going to be dry lab only. So this is just continuing with the acknowledgement that we are not asking coaches to reserve lab space, reserve a gym space, or even have any like manipulatives of like available in terms of lab materials. It will be only based on data provided or videos of lab things. No coach will have to actually like set up a chemistry lab. And so then you can see that, again, the events that are not being run on that written test day are just blanked out. For the device testing day, you'll see that those are noted as well. And then notably those hybrid events that Karen mentioned, like Sounds of Music in Division B, or there's a number of them in Division C, like detector building. They might have something happening on both days, a written test on Olympiad on that designated day, and then also a testing of a device on the device day. And then for state, everything is there with that note that we are still continuing to substitute experiment and data analysis in lieu of experimental design. So this is just to kind of give you a one pager that you can use as you're looking in the national rulebook to see what we're running at which tournaments. Just gonna check the chat briefly. Okay, yeah, so just to clarify, if you have a protected site, like if you're in Fairfax County and you're using Schoology, or if you're using like Blackboard and other districts, you can post it through that secure site. It just can't be like linked on a public forum. So like, for example, if your team has a public like Google site or something like that, you can't post the rules on that. Okay. So that's our event list. Let's talk a little bit about event conflicts and the schedules for the day. So Karen mentioned that our intention for the written test day is that we will be running a 6-session traditional model. Those 6 sessions require us to group events together that then create some event conflicts, meaning that a student can't participate in multiple events that are scheduled in the same group because they will be happening at the same time. These groups are provided for you for both B and C in this document. So you can see we have groups A through F, so 6 groups. Those are the 6 sessions that will be taking place on the written test day. Now, it doesn't guarantee that they're in this order. It might not be that Crime Busters and Experiment and Data Analysis are the first events of the day, but you can use this to, when you're crafting your teams and assigning events to students, to double check that you're not, double booking a kid where they're supposed to be in 2 places at once. All right. And you can also see that our state events are on this list as well. They're in blue. Again, acknowledging that these will not be a concern for the regional tournament, but if you qualify for state or if you attend an invitational, these groups do align with the national groupings. And so you can be mindful that if you're scheduling your kids for all events in anticipation of invitationals or qualification for state, you have this information from the very beginning. So this means, again, that if I have a student who's really interested in Crime Busters and Bioprocess Lab, they unfortunately will not be able to do both, and that choice will have to be made. So those are our 6 groupings for the written test day. And this is Division B. We can also see the same information for Division C with the 6 groupings and those event conflicts. Again, they are not guaranteed to be in this order as written A through F, but the conflicts listed for each group will be preserved for both regional and state tournaments. So that's for our written test day. The specifics of those times and the order of those groups will be shared at a later date. Obviously, part of that is we needed to, put that poll out about the 29th to know, are we going to be starting at 1:30? Are we doing a different day and starting early in the morning? So we didn't have that information finalized because we wanted that input. The part that will be the most new, even for returning coaches and teams, is how the device day is going to work. So again, this is a second Saturday. That day will be a choice, right? That you'll opt into a particular day. And the reason why we are doing it this way, 1, to have actual in-person build events, but 2, the model that we've chosen is allowing us to kind of minimize the size of the group that we're going to have in a building at a particular time, and really keeping it contained to those teams, just as an additional precaution. We don't really know, like Karen said, what the state of the world is going to be like in February. So for these build events, what this day is going to look like, it looks slightly different for the 2 divisions. So I'm going to go through both of them. For Division B, here is that sample device day schedule. So taking a look at this, what this means is that you and your team will be given a particular block of time. It's just about 2 hours of time. You'll show up, check in, and then there's a specific rotation of events that your team will be led through. These are not self-scheduled like they were in traditional formats of years past. Your team number will determine the time and sequence of events that you go through. But notably, for Division B, they have Mission Possible as an event this year. And Mission Possible is an event that takes a lot of time. There's a setup time, then they have to run it, then they have to talk through it with an event supervisor. So in order to make this schedule work, what we have determined is that Mission Possible will be running through the duration of that device window for your team. And it will be running while the rest of the team goes through the other 5 build events. This means that Mission Possible will conflict with all other build events on device day. So a student who does Mission Possible cannot participate in any of those other 5 builds. So ping pong parachute, bridge, storm the castle, mousetrap, and Sounds of Music. That also means, right, Sounds of Music is a hybrid event. So that means that they can't do the written test, nor can they do the device test. Those have to be the same students who do both components of that for Sounds of Music. So that will keep them out of that written test portion. So keep that in mind for your scheduling. So the students who are doing Mission Possible will be there through their whole block. And then the rest of your team, all your builders, will be going through a rotation to the 5 other building events in 15-minute increments. And this is then where Karen was talking about how, of course, you're probably going to have different kids doing ping pong parachute versus bridge versus storm the castle. So they're all traveling together, which means that they can cheer their teammates on when they are not actively testing a device. So I'm just going to keep this up here for a second. Let you take a look at it if you haven't already been looking at this document. And then I saw Fatima, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, Emily, so excuse my if this is a silly question, but if a kid is taking Mission Possible, safe to say they can't take any of the other ones, right?
Correct. They cannot do any of the other 5 listed builds on this list.
Got it. So because, all right, because that's going to conflict with everything. Okay.
Yes.
So that's the only build that they can do.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
This schedule for regionals does not include electric right stuff, which is a states only event. And in our intended state model of being in person, we would be returning to probably a self schedule for those builds, like it says on the sheet. So that means that a student in Mission Possible, if you are, trying to have them prepare even for states only events throughout the season, could do electric right stuff. And of course, there can be changes made between regionals and state at once, if you qualify and then select your state team, they would not be held to that same restriction for state regarding Mission Possible. All right, so let's take a look then at Division C to just note a couple differences in these schedules. For Division C, the table is very similar, notes what's happening in Olympiad on the written test day, what's being tested on device day. Division C does have more hybrid events, meaning that they have both a written and a device portion. So that's notably detector building, It's About Time, Wi-Fi lab. So that just has more that you'll have to be like, that'll have overlap of students on those days. But the thing I want to draw your attention to on this is It's About Time. Our intention is to actually do the device testing for It's About Time via Zoom on the written test day. We're hoping that we can make that work, but we want to acknowledge that it may not, and we want to leave that possibility open. So you're going to see on the device testing schedule, we are hoping that we won't have to include it on the device day, but if we decide that Zoom is just not going to work for us to do device testing for It's About Time, it will end up conflicting with detector building on the device day. So we're asking you to prepare for that in advance and not have students assigned to both detector and It's About Time, because if we do have to go to this model where It's About Time is part of our device testing day, they will conflict out. So wanted to make you aware of that. There are no other conflicts, however, in the Division C device day testing. They don't have an event like Mission Possible that requires more than just 15 minutes for testing. Again, we're not running right stuff, that's states only. So students would be able to be assigned to multiple build events in this case with no restriction other than the It's About Time and detector scenario, again, that we're asking you to pay attention to. But it has the same other groupings provided for you in the written test table for those event conflicts for the written exams. So again, for device testing day, it will require that your team is traveling all together throughout the day from one event to the next, cheering each other on. And so that will allow for us to kind of keep those pods of students contained. And that also means that you'll have the coach or other, adults that are assigned to each team that you've brought with you, traveling alongside with them. But there will be a restriction on how many there can be. Okay. And it's only for those 2 hours. It will be running throughout the whole day. So of course, it might not be 8:15 to 10 o'clock for every team. That would just be for teams 1 through 6. So those 2 hours blocks will be throughout the day, and teams will have some input on those times. And we recognize that, so there will be some more travel for some teams than others. All right, we've got a couple hands raised. So Anita.
Emily, hi, good morning. I just wanted to confirm that for teams that travel to Charlottesville, for instance, for the build, that you're requiring the entire team to check in at the same time. And if somebody is, I don't know, in group 6 and they're in one of the later events, they like the pair cannot just show up later in the day thinking, oh, I'm not right at the beginning. So you want everybody to register at the same time, correct?
Correct. We are asking that teams check in all together with everybody who will be representing them for the session that day, and then travel together. There will not be an opportunity to check in during those sessions. And that's part of our acknowledgement of the protocols we're trying to follow, that we don't just have groups of students like dispersed throughout a building, that they're all moving together during those 2 hours. So we hope that the 2 hour window will not be so burdensome that teams can't do that. And
thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. A bit of my question got answered when Anita asked hers, but so our team is also going to be participating in Division A, and they are participating in October. So this is a little later on, and like you said, things can change from now to February. We are encouraged for Division A not to kind of swarm and stay and set up tent or do all of that stuff. It's to stay within our cars, and then have like volunteers escort the kids inside for build events. If we actually have to all show up for our build event at the same time and register at the same time, I'm sure you don't have that question answer right now, but what would be the protocol for all of us kind of congregating in a place and setting up, because we have a couple of kids. So just for COVID protocol, what would be that scenario when we get to that space?
So the ask will be fairly similar in that, you could have the adults, right? The 2 adults that we're going to be allowing per team, whether that's a coach or another designated adult volunteer from your team, to kind of be waiting in the building, wherever that initial entrance is. And then the kids can then be dropped off by the parents who are not coming into the building to that volunteer right by the check-in site. So then parents who may be wanting to wait can do so outside of the building, but they will have 2 adults from your team that you've chosen, whether it's you, another coach, another like an adult volunteer or parent designee. They will be meeting all of the kids and then checking in together and then going around to all of the device sessions. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I think that I'm going to weigh in here too. It's, this is another one of these very, very specific details that we will be, as we get a little closer to this, I assure you, you will see more information than you want probably from us. And we'll also be very, in some ways, very specific to the venue, right? So we may say, okay, there's an overhang and everybody, we will, at that point, we'll know where we're checking in at the venue. Where do we want teams to congregate before they come into us? That kind of information. So we are thinking about traffic flow.
I also got a question about if a school has multiple teams, will they be going through all together? That's a great question because I'm a coach of a school that has multiple teams. So in that instance, this is by team number, not by school. So if you have, let's say 3 teams, then they will be going in the same block, but they will not be at the same event at the same time. So this will require some pre-planning in terms of who your adult people are that are going along with the students. But if I have 3 teams, my team 1 might be at ping pong parachute, while my team 2 would be at, Sounds of Music. My team 3 may be at Mousetrap Vehicle, and they will be moving parallel to one another, but it will not be all 3 teams together moving along. But we will, of course, in our schedule, make sure that your teams are in the same block of time. Any other questions regarding the events? Okay, Karen, did I miss anything?
No, that was wonderful, Emily. Thank you.
Great.
I know this is a lot of information, and I promise that we will be working hard to make sure that that you continue to get information about it. But we wanted everybody to know as much as you could at this moment. So as much as we can share. All right, so there are a few more things, so don't leave us yet. Oh, I'm sorry, Fatima, you had a question?
I did. It was a, I don't know if you're going to broach this topic, but I had just had a quick question. We have a child that has participated in division, is in 5th grade right now, and has participated in Division A in 3rd and 4th grade, and is wondering if they can participate in Division B. Now, the only question I have is, do you require like all of 5th grade to participate in the Division B, or can one child from 5th grade participate in Division B with the 6th grader?
So you may, a 5th grader, VASA will allow 5th graders in Division B.
Okay.
Now they may only choose one division. So that's the one grade that can go either direction.
Got it.
They may only choose one division. So if they're going to choose to be Division B, they cannot participate on your Division A team that you're fielding,
Right.
or vice versa. And the other thing is just, I would suggest you discuss that, with the parents or something, and assess maturity, because Division B is harder, as you well
Right.
know, because you've been coaching for a while, and there kind of requires a certain maturity to competing against 8th graders.
Right.
So but many children are ready for it and do well for it and are ready to move past Division A. So yes, we will accept a 5th grader.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to discussing briefly. And again, I have a few more things, so don't leave us yet, even though you've heard all the stuff about schedule and stuff, and particularly those of you that are student leaders of your clubs, because I have a request for you that's going to come in a couple slides down the road. But let's talk about registration. So registration, actually, the registration packet is available too. If you go to the website and let's see, actually, maybe I should share that. And well, that'll be complicated. Emily, can you go to the website and bring up the registration packet? If you just go to the registration page.
Sure.
I'm going to let you start sharing here again. So registration highlights for this year, though, there's a Google form to let us know of your intent to register. The registration packet is now available. So up at we haven't put a notification yet, but if you go up to under coaches and registration, to register. Yeah, okay. Well, so the registration packet has a little bit of a cover letter. Could you scroll down a little further? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of forms in the packet that need signatures from your principal, essentially talking about the satellite version of being in the school and that the school is sponsoring you. All right. We are not, if you are not an employee of the school, as long as the principal is acknowledging you as the coach of the school, we're okay with that. But I would encourage you to think about working with somebody who's an employee of the school if you are not, just because it will make your life easier as you're trying to schedule space. Okay, can you scroll back up to the table? So this is the thing that I really wanted people to see, In this packet is a table that talks about the steps of registration. So I'm not going to go through each one of those, but there are 2 systems that we are using this year. All right. We have a portal system, which if you were with us a couple of years ago, you've seen. And we have the Olympiad that you heard us talk about for testing. Now, Olympiad does have a registration component, but as wonderful a testing system as it is, and it's amazing, it's written specifically for Science Olympiad, it is an awkward registration system that we have found, and we are moving away. We are not going to use Olympiad for registration. All registration steps that have to do with designating the coach, getting the permissions for students to participate, entering your team numbers, paying, all of that will happen in the VASO portal. And you can then, the testing system is just in Olympiad, but there are various things you're going to have to do in the testing system. So if you scroll down a little further on that page, Emily, you'll see that there's the links down there. Now, if you could go back up again, please. But please note that the portal is not available till 9/20. So that's a week from Monday. Olympiad even later. You don't really need to do anything for us in Olympiad till we get much closer to tournaments. But there you go. So that's so the instructions are there. It will start with a Google form. But even if you're ready to go, you don't have to wait for getting into our portal and stuff to download the rules and start work on all the information that we've given you. Okay. So I know a couple of you have written to me going, registration, when does registration open? Go ahead and get started with your events and everything, and then you can get into the portal and you can pay and do all of that stuff. All right, thanks, Emily. Can I go back to sharing? Okay, good. So going back to my share here for the minute. So you've seen that. So there is that chart in the registration packet that helps you keep attention of what needs to be doing. For regionals, we are not going to be asking teams for event riders or supervisors. All right, there's just that one possibility that we talked about on device day where we may need you each to contribute somebody to do a stopwatch, but I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that we can utilize all of our resources to not even ask for that. And as I said, like the Charlottesville one, I'm feeling pretty good. We're not going to need to ask for that. And then high school student coaches will also be able to register your student leadership to receive emails and access the portal. And I'm going to have some guidelines for that though in a minute. But as we go on that, I do think this is important for me to say. In-person tournaments need a lot more workers than what we're setting up to do right now. And an in-person states means that the teams coming to states will need at that time to offer an event supervisor, which means an event judge, and probably several additional volunteers to be extra hands to help with grading or to do stopwatches or things like that. So know that while we are not asking for that as part of your registration, it's not part of, we hope that the regional experience will not have that. That will be an ask if you are going to states, because we won't be able to pull together, when we're doing like a virtual written test day, we can pull our alums from all over the United States to work. And that's a gift, and that's great, but we obviously don't have access to all of that when we're in one locale, people there. I wanted to show you all about the fees this year. So I hope that you saw in our social media that we have published our fees, and we got that we recognize that schools are still recovering. They're still working on. I mean, we're just still all recovering from, on multiple levels, and so we would have needed to raise our fees this year, because in-person tournaments or any in-person component does cost a lot more. We have to pay facilities fees, we have to feed the judges, all of these kinds of things. But we are really excited to announce that, first of all, Northrop Grumman has given us a grant, a wonderful grant, that they want focused on our schools that have a high percentage of free and reduced lunch students. And you can see that in this, that this is this part of it. You can look up your free and reduced lunch percentage on the DOE list of free and reduced lunch percentages, which I have a link to here. Actually, I just made a PDF of it. You can find your school and find out what your free and reduced lunch percentage is. And if it's within these bounds, this is all you're going to pay to register one team. You'll pay, if it's higher than 45%, you register one team, it's $26 for the team. Or if you're registering two, it's $43. So it's a considerable grant that they asked to be focused entirely on this population. VASA wanted to give also and recognize that that teams are also still recovering, that there may be some janitor fees, custodial fees as you get to as you are in your schools. So we are funding our own discount from some surplus and anticipating being a little bit at a loss this year, so that we could give the rest of the teams a discount as well too, from the fees that we would have needed to be solid this year. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you that VASA's in danger. It's not. I just wanted everyone to know that we are trying very hard to do what we can in terms of fees. We know that this can be an issue. This discount is given automatically in the portal. We've looked up all the school. We've got the schools, and it's already put into there. If you have the Department of Education's, this is the Virginia Department of Education, their website is a little out of date. If you have more recent information that's different from what there says, please present it to us, let us know, and we can talk about that. Okay. Student leadership. So those of you, I hope you've hung in there, that are officers in your clubs. I understand, I think it's wonderful, the leadership that you're taking in your high school clubs to make Science Olympiad happen. And I think that that's important. I know you all do a lot of assigning of events and a lot of that kind of, I'm going to call it paperwork that needs to be done in either Silentpiad or the portal. So I am happy to grant you all access to that, but I'm going to ask that it be done in a specific way, that you create a generic officer email like hogwartsso@gmail.com, and it can either be a forward to your leadership team or your leaders can check it. That would be something that could be passed from officer group to officer group over the years. And then you use that email to sign up for the portal and Silentpiad. It's actually a deal about the personal addresses of students, the personal email addresses of students, and VASA really should not collect them. That has become, as we've gone into a virtual environment, attention has been paid a lot more to that. And so and some of you were great when you signed up for this call, you signed up, you already have this generic email and you signed up using it. So kudos for you for that. But those of you that signed up with a personal email, that's the last time I'm going to use it. I'm going to throw them away, and I'm going to feel obligated if I see personal student emails in Silentpiad or the portal to delete them. So please, I don't think it's hard to do this. If you have questions about it, but please, student leadership, sign up this way. And then this is also a great way for me to continue to contact your student leadership year after year as I send out like notifications of something like this, that we don't need to constantly say, oh, was this person last year's president, or this, which is a complication when the students turn over so frequently. That makes sense, students? I'm going to assume it does, or everybody went away. We'll find out. So a few other thoughts. MySO. MySO is for individuals. This is not something that VASA runs. This is a nationally run program. It's for individuals. There's no tournament structures. It's an add-on program that can be used as a standalone or to support any SO season. There is the link for it is over here on the side. They have a 9-month calendar, and essentially what they do is they have a theme for the month, and then they have some lesson plans and maybe a webinar or a series where people can listen to people who are doing work in the field, and then interviews about careers. And then there's an optional little STEM competition at the end of the month. It costs $10 if individuals want to compete. And then there's a national leaderboard you can be on with that. And I know a lot of people like that. A lot of people did that as an add-on last year. Some people did that. So students, whether on a team or not, can use the free resources. Anybody can use the free resources. They're free, they're available. You don't have to compete in the STEM Showdown, but you can if you want. And just as a note, VASA receives 25% of any showdown fees that are collected that come from students that participate from Virginia. Not that I'm trying to tell anybody they need to, but that's a nice plus from nationals. You can go to this link to see the program for the year. I think they've started September, and I think the theme for this month is epidemiology. I wanted to say a word about invitationals. So an invitational, the name is misleading. For those of you that never encountered the term before, it doesn't mean that you have to specifically be invited, which a lot of people confuse that as they go into this. They're practice tournaments, essentially. And registration opens and you are free to go and participate in these if you choose. They don't have any impact on your regional, on moving up through the regional state structure, but it's a nice opportunity. You get a lot more feedback. You usually get your tests back, which you don't at regionals or states. It's a nice experience if you can do that. I wanted to say a few words though. They're independently run. Remember that, please. I get through the year, I will get a lot of emails from coaches that are frustrated that a tournament in Montana that they're doing virtually is not run on the same schedule as ours, or they're not running the same events. They're going to have a different format. They can have a different schedule. They can have different events. So please be aware of that. They most certainly will require an additional cost from you. They are typically fundraisers for the schools that are hosting them. They're creating them. It's typically $60 to $120 per team. It varies a lot, and it's not going to be discounted. They're not going to have like a free and reduced lunch pricing or anything like that. You won't see that. Virtual invitationals, which I think most of them are going to be, will each have their own Olympiad site. So you'll be, after you create an account in ours, actually that information will be able to move from site to site. But you're going to need to make sure you and your students are on the correct site on tournament day. And if you're using an invitational to practice for your VASA regional, don't be panicked by events that we aren't running here that you see at their invitational. You don't have to do all the events at an invitational. Practice the ones you want to, and you don't have to try their, whatever kind of unique event they might be running in that state or whatever. There still can be amazing, wonderful practices. Now we do have two invitationals that typically happen in Virginia. One is the Fairfax High School one, and one is the Lake Braddock one. Sam, you're on. Would you like to say anything about the Fairfax High School one at this moment?
I would like to share some information. Unfortunately, we don't have much information. We typically have it the first week of January, but we still have to coordinate with our building and figure out some of the other issues like event schedules and all that stuff. We will definitely get that published as soon as we are able to.
Do you know what kind of, I think that you're scheduled, it's scheduled to be on January 8th.
It is currently in the building for January 8th. We still have to wait and see how things evolve with the building use too. So
you're considering completely in person or some other format you're still waiting to see?
At the moment, we are still considering the traditional in-person tournament. If things evolve where that's not possible, then we'll evaluate our options at that time.
Okay, thank you. Emily and her team hosts the Division B Lake Braddock one in December. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Sure. Currently, we have secured December 11th, I believe, as our date. We intend to share information specifically first with Virginia schools shortly after registration is open for VASO registration, just because we know that that's a priority first. Our intention in running this tournament is to try to mimic as much as possible what VASO is doing, because we are catering to the younger group of students who just sometimes need the practice of what it's going to look like for regionals to kind of ease some of the anxiety that can come with testing. So we intend to do a hybrid model similar in some way to what VASO is doing, but we are attempting to allow it to happen all in one day, but intend to have in-person builds and virtual written tests. So look for more information on that once we finalize all of that, late September, early October.
Is when you'll open registration. Okay,
Yes.
great. And so Sam, you all aren't ready to open registration at all. And that will, we'll make announcements when that becomes available for yours, correct?
Yes, definitely. We'll
Okay.
have information as soon as we're able to. We would have to have a few more meetings before we're able to actually open up registration, and we'll definitely inform you so that way you can share it with the Virginia Division C schools.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. One of the final note is you must be registered with VASO before you can go to any invitationals. And that means, and that you can't take more teams to an invitational than you have registered with VASO. And invitationals are required to check. So, and state directors talk across different states to check that too. So please be aware of that as well too. So you'll want to move on your invitation, on your registration with us. Something we have this year, Student Outreach Network. Some of you saw some of this last year. It's founded last year by a group of high school students looking to serve the VASO community through like mentoring, through helping other teams. I think it's a marvelous, wonderful organization. That promotes the connection between teams in a variety of ways. And they're going to be looking for high school students, SO students, to volunteer as mentors. And I think it's wonderful that teams can help other teams. So their intention this year, last year, they did a lot of very individual mentoring sessions. They did well over 100 individual mentoring sessions. And as the word of them gets out, that's too much for them to handle. This year, they will probably be doing group, on this day, we'll do food science, and, and people can attend and listen and ask their questions and learn. So that is what I expect to see happening, but they are still getting themselves organized. And we'll be sending some information out that you could share with your high school students if they'd like to consider volunteering. I know many people did that for community service hours as well. Some resources, just so you know, I presented so much information today, and I'm sure everybody's brain is on overload, but this will be up on the website, including we'll put this up on our YouTube channel. So you can go to the YouTube channel, watch it again in all its glory. We'll have the slides available too. We have a new coach liaison that can answer a lot of questions about team construction, how to think about that. There are event resources, our website, the national website. There's something called Scioli. And if you go to our event pages, there's links to Scioli that you'll see that is a very often used resource. We have VASO clarifications. Those are on our event pages, and we have a page for those, and those are important. They'll make potential changes to events. Keep an eye on those. There's going to be SNET. In October, we'll have a coaches clinic. We'll cover a variety of topics. We'll do it virtually, like, we'll do 1 hour on Olympiad for the newbie, things like that. And in November, we'll do some kind of a VASO building event open house where we'll talk about bridges and mousetrap vehicles and catapults and show some of the testing, what does the testing equipment look like, what to think about, because those are a unique brand of event that bring its own challenges. Follow us on social media. If you've been following us on social media, you've seen some of these things well before today. We have a new social media person who is avidly working hard on getting this information out. We're really excited by that. So we're available in all of those spots. And I think that is the end of my spiel. Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Will there be an SO day to demo practical events? I'm not sure why. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to ask me that question out loud and explain by what you mean by practical events. I'm not totally sure.
So this is like a couple of years ago, we used to have a day in which there will be a live demo of some of the build events. So kids usually visit a school like Longfellow or some other school, and there'll be details on the build events.
Right, we do that in November. That was the November Build a Day, that building event day that I said. I don't know whether we'll be doing it live or we'll be doing it virtually, and pull those out and have people stand beside some samples. But we're still working on the format of that. We needed to get the season up and running, and then we'll figure out exactly how that looks. But it is our intention to have some kind of build event day. Yes. Anybody else? Okay, somebody said that they missed the beginning of the meeting. Do we have the regional date set yet? I'm going to encourage you to go back to the meeting because this was a big discussion. It occurs about halfway in the middle of it. So after we post this, because revisiting that's going to be a big thing. Thanks. Anybody else? Well, I don't hear anything and I don't see anything in the chat. Thank you everyone for your time today. We're excited about this season. I know that it's still unnerving to figure out, to still have not everything be exactly known, but I think we know a lot, we know enough, and we'll be able to move forward in an organized fashion to make this year happen. So thank you to all of you.
Thanks, Karen, Emily, Sam.